HOW.com and see the person on our listen line listening to this. And it's Michael Hutner, Jason Saltzman, and some guitar player in a room full of these Progress Now people singing. It is unquestionably the most laugh-out-loud video. These are the people who ran the scam. They're crooks. They're foot padders. They're copperheads. They're jackwagons. And look at that video. There he is. I did a great introduction here. I said, I feel like I know you, listening to you with Rick and Mike for so many years. Mike Evans joins us. And Mr. Evans, good morning, man. Thanks for coming on KHOW.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
I feel like I know you. Rick and Mike are probably my best friends in the business, and you've been on Lewis and Floorwax forever. And oftentimes when I get out of here early, I listen to you in their final hour. So, but for the folks in the audience, do your background and in this business, and just take your time if you would.
Well, there's really not a lot to talk. I've been in L.A. a long time. I wrote for the New York Post many years ago. I did mornings at a station in Los Angeles. I talked a lot about that. I was shocked when I read a story last week that there was a lot of the story, but the bottom line of the story is that the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital and the Queens Medical Center said that they did not have a birth certificate on record.
Now, I listened to the KQRS morning show, and I listened to you and those hosts, and you shared a controversy, or this controversy rather, in a conversation that you had with the governor. Is that an accurate statement?
No, it isn't. If you listen to it, I just listened to it again. I said I talked to Neil's office. I didn't say that I talked to Neil. And I said, but the one thing that did come out is that there was no birth certificate at Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital or at the Queens Medical Center. And I said that's where it would come from, and I was actually calling to see what Neil had to say about that, but I was never able to get hold of the governor.
Michael, who was your source? Who told you that?
I read it last week, and it was on the Drudge Report.
I mean, but no one did. Anyone in the who was it in the governor's office that said there is no birth certificate?
I read it, and I believe it was the New York Daily News that said that their reports there was no birth certificate at the Queens Medical Center or the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital. I was calling the governor. I was calling Neil to see what he thought about that. I never got through to him. I talked to his office to ask him about that, and if you listen carefully, it's just said there's no record of there still isn't. There's some kind of birth announcement that has since been said, which is a little shaky if you ask me.
You're talking about the newspapers?
The newspapers have been out. The newspapers, the Honolulu Advertisers, there was a story.
And the Examiner. They both carried little. Are you talking about initially, or are we talking about recently? Because I'm
talking. I believe that there was a birth announcement in the Honolulu Advertiser back in the day.
Yes, there was.
Right. My whole question when I called the governor last week is after I read a story, and it was on the Drudge Report. It was a long story. The first story is that the governor could not find a birth certificate. And as the story went on, towards the very end of the story, it said the only two hospitals that were having births in that time, the Honolulu, the Queens Medical Center and the Kapiolani Children's Hospital, had no record of a birth certificate. That's the story.
No, and I understand that. So here's a quote that I have from you. There is no Barack Obama birth certificate in Hawaii, absolutely no proof at all Obama was born in Hawaii.
Well, from the Kapiolani Women's, from the two hospitals that gave birth to children, there is no record of that. There is no birth certificate.
Now, you also go on, if all this is correct, that you said that Abercrombie, the governor and your friend, now, quote, has egg on his face.
Well, you're putting, I don't want to.
No, this is your quoted as saying that, so I'm asking if you said it.
He said he was going to torpedo.
Right.
These birth questions.
Absolutely.
And I thought, as a governor, I thought if there was anybody that could do it, he did. Certainly, not being able to do so, it doesn't make the governor look good. I mean, does it?
No, he's gone into the weeds right now. Abercrombie told L.A. Times, New York Times, and I have the Tribune, and he claimed that he actually saw
but he can't make it public because of privacy issues.
Well, it's just nonsense.
And my other question is, how do you get a passport if you don't have a birth certificate?
Well, of course. I mean, but again, all these things start to come up. What I'm asking you is, you grew up in Hawaii. You know this governor who made a splash in December the 6th. When he takes office, he's going to torpedo the birthers. And then he gets on the job, and his spokeswoman, Donella Dela Cruz, from my notes,
right,
said, now the number one priority is the economy. And then now the governor has come out and said, he said, I'll read it to you. Abercrombie did not report the newspaper or he or the Hawaii Department of Health found Obama's long-form hospital-generated birth certificate. The governor only suggested his investigation to date had identified an unspecified listing or notation of birth that someone had made in the state archives. Is that a birth certificate?
I don't know.
I don't either. So, Abercrombie. Now, if you attempt,
I can tell you this. I feel like I sort of got caught in the crosshairs.
No, I'm not.
The last thing I was thinking about last week when I was doing my Hollywood reports was Neil, and then I see this big story that Neil says that he can't provide a birth certificate.
That's why we want you on.
That.
That's why I want you on the show.
I was shocked by that.
So the governor has said he cannot provide a birth certificate.
I haven't talked to him. The Kapi'olani Women's and Children's Hospital and the Queens Medical Center.
Let me do this.
They say they cannot supply one. So from what I read, the governor said they cannot supply one. And then 2 days later, the whole story changed. I'm sure you're on top of this.
Okay. Right.
2 days later, the story changed that he said, well,
that's right.
There is one.
But
the story changed in 2 days.
Here's what you said. This is you on the Minneapolis station.
Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor at the Kapi'olani Women's and Children's Hospital and Queens Hospital, the only places kids were born in Hawaii back when Barack was born. There is no Barack Obama birth certificate in Hawaii.
And you stand by that through the Abercrombie people? I
don't.
You don't stand by that?
Well, no. Again, I talked to his office. I didn't talk to the governor. I called because of the story that I read that there's no birth certificate at Queens or at Kapi'olani.
But you said Neil says, and so...
I didn't say Neil said.
I don't want to play that again.
Play it again.
All right, here, if you would. Sheik?
Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor.
Now, this is... You're saying Neil says, but...
No, I
then I misunderstand you.
I did say I didn't talk to Neil. I didn't hear Neil say it, but
okay.
through the reason that I called is because of the newspaper article saying that Kapi'olani didn't have it. So I was calling to.
Have you spoken to? I think you said this earlier, but have you spoken with Neil Abercrombie since he has taken office?
No, I haven't. Last time I talked to Neil, I did a C-SPAN interview that he asked me to do a half-hour television interview show. At C-SPAN the day after Barack Obama was inaugurated, and it was then that he really got into how he was going to prove that he was born in Hawaii.
Have you attempted to call him?
I have not. Except that one time I called last week to find out about that story that I read about Kapi'olani.
Should you, in a follow-up, not call him?
I am going to call him.
Okay.
I am going to call him, and in a way, it makes it sound I'm going to apologize to him. And I also wish that I would have been able to reach him last week when I read the story. Again, rather than the story, did you see the story about the Kapi'olani women?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, but you're the guy who. And by the way, that your interview has now been taken down off of the website. The KQRS morning shows, and that's down. I don't know who did that. We captured it because we got it the other day when it came up. So there seems to be a disconnect here. And I would suspect, and you've done great work, that you got to call this guy and you got to speak to him and say, okay, on the record, did you find a birth certificate?
Well, I'm definitely going to call him today because I'm going to. I mean, Neil is a friend of mine, and I apologize. I apologize. I'm going to apologize to Neil because.
What would you apologize for?
I was just following the story, and it makes me look like I'm accusing.
Yeah,
I think Neil is. Well, I know Neil's dancing because I think he really thought he could provide.
No,
I think
there's one.
And apparently he can't.
No, he can't.
That's why. I mean, that's why.
Okay.
And I thought he could. I thought as a governor, if there was one around, he could get it.
Believe me, and he's getting no help from Washington D.C. and he does look like a damn fool. But
you know what? He's not a damn. I mean, no. I don't know how. I mean, Neil is really a good guy. I mean,
that's not in question whether he's a good guy or a bad guy.
I'm almost. I really don't know what to say. When I read the story, I'm sure I can find it and we'll pull it up. The direct quotes, the Capullani and the Queen say they do not have a birth certificate.
And that's true.
Then I mean, my question is, I mean, that was a big enough story, and because I know Neil, I want to follow it up.
We're past our break, and I know that you got a bunch of work to do this morning. But when you speak with Neil, ask him, because he made a claim that he remembered Barack Obama playing and his mother and father watching him play T-ball. Now, you played T-ball, you're 5 or 6 years of age. Barack Obama's, if you believe the nativity story, Barack Sr. left when Barack was 2, which is, Barack's already left the island with his mother when he's 2 weeks of age. But he says, I remember him playing T-ball. Then he remembers seeing the Obama's father, mother, and baby at social events, in quotes. He initially said he was there when the baby was born. Now, he's lying. And I got to tell you that straight up. You say he's a good guy, I take your word for it. But he could have never seen Barack Obama play T-ball. Because, first of all, when Barack's 5 and 6, he's in Indonesia. His father's gone to Harvard, and do what you may with that.
I know that the couple of times while we were doing the TV interview on C-SPAN, a couple of times, at least once, I think twice, we had to stop taping because Neil kept referring to Barack as Barry, and he says, I've known him since he was a little kid. I saw him from the time he was so little. I keep wanting to call him Barry, and I can't do it anymore.
He couldn't have done that. The baby and the mother left for Seattle when baby was somewhere around 2 weeks to 17 days of age. She's gone. And they can make all those proofs from, enrollment in school and the rest of it. She doesn't come back to the Rock with the baby until seniors left. And then she meets Lolo and goes off to Indonesia. So for him to have claimed, this man who says a good man, he claims that I remember him playing T-ball. That's a quote. He couldn't have. And watching Barack Sr. and Stanley Ann watching a 5 or 6-year-old boy play T-ball. That's a virtual impossibility, whether you believe in the nativity story or the truth. And then saying that he saw them at social engagements together. They never lived together. They were never married.
Well, that I don't know, but
I do.
I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that Neil went into great detail about watching Barry, as he called him, and told Warren.
Well, those are lies. But why do you figure he said those things? Because they are provable to be lies. Why do you think he said those things? What's his interest in other than torpedoing the birthers, which now he can't do?
I don't.
So if you get a chance to ask him about that T-ball game.
I'll do that.
All right, and ask him about the social events that he attended, remembering seeing the baby and the parents at social events, plural. Of course, Barack left for Harvard 4 years before Barack Obama was T-ball eligible.
I do know. I mean, I cannot believe that Neil didn't know him as a kid.
Well, he initially said, by the way, as you know, he said he was there when the baby was born.
Yeah.
He said that. He said, I'll read to you from the Los Angeles Times. Maybe I'm the only one in the country that can look you right in the eye right now and tell you I was here when the baby was born. Los Angeles Times right after the 6th of December. Ask him about that. If you're a good friend, and ask him. I remember him playing T-ball. He couldn't have. It's impossible.
Let me ask you. Do you have a second?
Of course I do.
Let me ask you. Do you remember last week when this whole thing came about, and how the Kapiolani Children's Hospital in Queens said they have no record of his birth?
Well, I have to go back through my notes. But I have a really great guest sitting here on hold, listening, who is an expert. Would you like to stay and listen to him?
Sure.
All right. Let's take the break, Sheik. 23 after the hour of 8. This is The Man. Coming up, we'll bring him on with Jerry. Hang on, KHOW Radio.
Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor at the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital and Queens Hospital, the only places kids were born in Hawaii back when Barack was born. There is no Barack Obama birth certificate in Hawaii.
That's Mike Evans' voice. He is with us on the line, Dr. Jerry Corsi, who forgot more about the story than I'll ever know. Doctor's been listening. Mike, you asked to stay through this. The way that sounds is that you spoke with him. Now, you have not, and so what is it that you would like to ask or say, and then I'd like Dr. Jerry Corsi to join us.
Well, it says that I talked to the office. I'm not going to split hairs. My wife told me, she says, you do Hollywood reports, stay with Hollywood. But when this story came up in the newspaper, it was a New York paper, again, the Kapiolani Medical Center in Queens said there was no birth certificate. I wanted to call Neil, having known Neil, and find out what's going on. What's the story on that? No, Neil didn't actually say it to me. I was following up the story, and as I was waiting before we went back on the air, God, there's signs, seals, certificates, and everything else in the last 72 hours coming out of Hawaii that there's no birth certificate. So there you go.
Let me turn it to Dr. Corsi. Jerry, it's yours.
And by the way, you say that this Dr. Corsi knows more than you ever know.
He's been my teacher on this story.
I called Neil's office last week because I don't know anything. I read it. Read it in the paper, but I got to tell you, having known Neil for as long as I have, and as convinced and as sure as he was when I talked to him during the inauguration that he was going to make a big deal.
Well, there's no question about that. Torpedo was the word he used.
I believed what he said, and I was surprised more than anything else when I read in the newspaper that there was no birth certificate.
All right, turn it over to Dr. Corsi. Jerry?
Okay.
Well, Peter, good to be with you, and nice to speak to you, Mr. Evans, on the phone. With all due respect, it sounds like your story is changing, if only subtly. I mean, you did say in the radio show in Minneapolis that you called the office, and he said, implying that you had talked to the governor. Now, if you hadn't, it seems also today clear still that the governor's office did nothing to indicate that they had found a long-form birth certificate or they had found any birth certificate information at Kapiolani or Queens. So it doesn't sound like that call did anything to dissuade you from the impression that these documents don't exist in Hawaii.
That they don't exist in Hawaii?
Right. Governor can't find them. They're not there. They don't exist.
I don't think they do exist.
Right. And it seems like that's clearly the impression you got when you called the governor's office. And, in fact, that's why you went on the radio to make the statement that these documents don't exist after you called the office.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but I never talked to Neil. I was only going, and I was. It does not sound. I'm not happy with the way this sounded. I called the governor's office, and Neil said I didn't talk to Neil. Neil never told me that. Again, the only reason reason I made that call is because that morning I read in the paper that the two hospitals said there is no birth certificate. I wanted to find out if that was true, so I called.
And when you called the office in governor's office in Hawaii did nothing to dissuade you to say, "Oh no, we found the documents, we have them."
No, they did not. No, absolutely not. No.
Okay, so
I never got through to them, and I never got a call back either.
Well, you spoke to the office. I mean, so someone must have given you some information at the office.
They didn't give me any information on that. I asked if the governor was in. I left my name, and was left at that. Then I read the story again, and was it just me, or wasn't there a big story last week that there was no birth certificate?
There were several stories last week, but would you, if you're going to talk to the governor now, right?
I'm going to try.
Okay, when you do, would you ask the governor very directly if they have found in Hawaii the long-form hospital-generated birth certificate, and if Kapiolani and Queens have birth certificates for Barack Obama, and if so, we can ask Barack Obama to release the documents once we know for a definitive fact that Neil Abercrombie says they exist. So would you ask those questions, please?
If I get hold of him, of course, he didn't call me when I called last week, so I don't know that he's going to call me back this week, especially after this. But
yeah. But I want to know where he watched the T-ball game, because that is numerically and historically a lie. Jerry?
Well, first of all, the governor did say he was there when Barack Obama
was born.
He
That's his quote.
Los Angeles Times.
That's right.
And then the New York Times, in a subsequent interview, pressed Governor Abercrombie if he meant he was at the hospital when the baby was born.
And no, that changed.
And Governor Abercrombie said he was not at the hospital when the baby was born.
But he saw them at social events.
Then the next story is later. In other words, many years later, the story that I watched the C-SPAN interview very carefully.
I did too.
Yesterday we reported in WND Today. And when you, Mr. Evans, were talking to the governor said he remembered Barry Sartoro or Barry Obama or whatever, little Barry, walking around with his grandfather all over the island, holding hands and introducing to everyone with Stan Dunham. Now that is walking around. I mean, this is not a small child.
Now who is that? Who is Stan Dunham?
Stan Dunham?
The grandfather.
This is the grandfather. It's Barack Obama's grandfather.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
It's in your. If you go back, sir, and listen to your interview on C-SPAN, it is the story that Governor Abercrombie told you on the C-SPAN interview that he remembers seeing little Barry with Stan Dunham, his grandfather, walking around the island.
So you've seen the television interview I did with Neil?
Yes, and we also have it today listed on WorldNetDailyWND.com, so our viewers can watch and listen to your interview with the governor the day after the inauguration.
So, see, I haven't seen that. In fact, I don't know that I have ever seen it after it was recorded. I know that it's out there because people have called me.
I've watched it.
You were there doing the interview, so perhaps you have recollection from doing the interview.
I mean, what I remember, and again, I knew Neil very well when we were in Hawaii together. He was very well. That's beside the point. At the television interview at C-SPAN, I mean, the one thing that did stick out in my mind is how close he was to the president, and I remember him telling me stories, and I'm glad at least we have that down about him knowing him as a child.
Well, but see, sir, the point is this: that when the baby was about 3 weeks old until 1962, when Barack Obama Sr. left the islands to go to Harvard. Ann Dunham, the mother, and little Barry were in Seattle, and she was attending the University of Washington. We have the school records. We have the apartment. They were gone. So from birth to about age 1 and something, Barack Obama was not on the islands to be seen by Neil Abercrombie. And then very shortly after that, from the time and the dates aren't exactly precise, but certainly from the time Barack Obama's about 6 to 10, he's supposed to be in Indonesia. So there's a very limited window there. And I'm not doubting that Governor Abercrombie saw little Barry with the grandfather on the islands. It's just
he didn't see senior Stanley Ann and the baby playing T-ball. No way.
He didn't see the three of them together as a family unless he saw them at the hospital.
I'm getting overrun here. We're so behind. Mr. Evans, would you like to stay or go? And it would be up to Dr. Corsi, but I got a break.
I don't have any more to add.
All right.
The only thing that I really apologize for is when I called the governor's office and didn't reach him. Instead of saying the governor's office or Neil, I should have referred back to the reason that I called. That there's stories that there is no birth certificate of those two hospitals, and I wanted to find out what was going on. Not that Neil told me that.
Well, then, we need to follow up with you because you obviously need to back this. You need to call your good friend, and he needs to talk to you. So, Jerry, anything you'd like to add? Then I got a break, guys.
And also, just please ask the governor when exactly he saw the Barack Obama Sr. and Dunham, the mother, and Little Barry together as family, because
social events.
Did he say that in the television interview?
Yes, he did. He said social events, plural.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Mike. Jerry, hang on. 630 KHW, Denver's talk station. I'm Peter Boyles. Traffic, we're behind. I apologize. All right, 8:43, 17 before 9. I'll bet Mr. Evans wishes he hadn't done that. 630 KHW, good morning on a Wednesday. We'll see the fallout of that. Jerry Corsi stands by, and then we'll get into a couple quick calls and get out of here. That'll be 9 o'clock and a time for the change in the shift. If you owe $20,000 or more in back taxes to the state or the IRS, listen to this. It's Larson Financial, Larson Financial. These are your friends. It's tax time. You or your business, you owe back taxes or have missed filing tax returns. Don't wait for the state or the IRS to catch up to you, because they will. They'll levy your bank accounts. They can garnish your wages. Larson, Larson Financial, tax resolution has helped thousands of people and businesses like you. Now, their website is Larson, Larson-financial.com, Larson-financial.com. Phone number is 303-554-0778, 303-554-0778. They have a gold star with the Better Business Bureau. This is what they do. Their office is in Westminster, 303-554-0778. Jerry, what did you make of all of that? You stayed through it. You listened to it. It's certainly a different interview than the one I heard.
Well, clearly, look, this is typical of what goes on with the Barack Obama birth certificate issues. The backtracking and cover-up starts almost immediately as soon as someone's told the truth.
What did you think of him?
Well, again, he's embarrassed. Apparently embarrassed at what he said, and he's trying to say, well, I didn't talk to the governor.
Yeah.
So that's where I want to say, okay, now when you do talk to the governor, be sure to ask him about this and come back to us with the answer.
Yeah.
The governor can produce, look, I've said from the beginning, if I'm happy to believe that Barack Obama was born in Hawaii. It's like Ronald Reagan said, I'll be trusting of it, but I want to verify it.
Oh, sure.
And if Hawaii can produce a long-form hospital-generated birth certificate that proves Barack Obama was born in Hawaii, let's let the American people see it. What's wrong that the American people can't see that document?
Right.
Now, the reason I don't believe it exists, in 2008, when I wrote The Abomination, I was in Honolulu, and I paid private investigators. We were searching at both hospitals. We're searching at hospitals all through the islands, and I can attest that there is no birth record of Barack Obama in any Hawaiian hospital. In fact, I can't even find that Ann Dunham was ever a patient at any Hawaiian hospital.
And that's, Andy says that others, like and this guy's, it was in so over his head. And, he didn't know. He didn't know.
No, he waded into this because he's a friend with Governor Abercrombie.
Or he was, at least.
He was. Well, the key issue is, look, the story remains the same. In other words, where's the birth certificate? Which is what I titled my book that's coming out in May. Take a look at Amazon.com.
Well,
the book is up there right now. I'm going forward with this.
I'm reading the transcript.
I want to see the birth certificate.
Yeah, I'm reading the transcript. And he says, Evans spoke to Abercrombie on January the 19th. Obviously, he didn't. But, this was, you can hear him say it. There's no
backtracking.
He's back.
Evans is backtracking.
Yeah, but the things that
changing his story and backtracking.
Abercrombie's got his own set of problems. I remember him playing t-ball, or I was there when the baby was born, and all that kind of stuff. But this guy Evans, who got tremendous national attention, and now he's headed into the weeds. So he either best call his good friend Neil Abercrombie and straighten this mess out, or because this stuff got national attention.
Well, and this is beyond Mike Evans now. The issue is very simple. If Neil Abercrombie, as governor of Hawaii, having trumpeted to the world that he was going to destroy the birthers, torpedo the birthers,
which he can't do,
cannot produce a long-form hospital-generated birth certificate for Barack Obama in Hawaii, that deserves to be a major story because we've got a lie and a cover-up going on.
Also, I know you're going to take off. We're going to try. We're behind on our breaks, but get a chance to see those Progress Now guys singing on that video we have
I have. I'm going to continue the
Oh, my
investigative
God.
report.
Yeah, I know he gave you those
Huttner.
other numbers.
Yes, and we're going to continue pursuing that. Next week, I'm planning to publish more on Progress Now and on Huttner and on the 50 ways to help Obama change America, and the prize to the official birth hospital of Barack Obama that Huttner could not deliver on and did not deliver on when he promised it and wrote his book.
And as did Abercrombie. That's a way. All right, sir.
Well,
thanks, Jerry.
The long-form birth certificate. We're waiting to see it.
All right, here we go. It's 8:48, 12 minutes before the hour. Boy, that blew up in Evans's face. 6:30 KHOW up to the minute traffic. Here's Susan. Thanks, Shark. That's the Shark from the Fox. Great voice. It's 9 minutes before the hour. 8:51, 303-713, 8255. Open lines to the top, and what a morning. And this guy, Mike Evans, his wheels came off, and that will be up at 9 o'clock, and I'm sure that lots of people across the country will be tapping into that. Also, that bizarre cult-like video of the Progress Now people is up as well. All right, so it's KHOW and my healed face, KHOW.com. Lots of years been talking to you folks about, that when you need a new car, new truck, good used, you should go to Medved. And, I don't take this lightly. John Medved is the man, and you do people, when you represent somebody on the air, you want to do it straight. And when I say go to Medved, it's because I go to Medved. Medved is where I got this really cool hybrid, little, 4-wheel drive, tiny little hybrid, and I've had it for a couple of years now. I've never liked the car as much as I like this car. And John's where I bought it, and, I was in there like everybody else, and I watched Medved grow from a single-point Chevy dealer, one of the leading family-owned automotive retailers in the state. Medved is everything you can, from the entry levels to work trucks and Chevys for sure, but also Cadillacs and Buicks and GMCs and Fords and Lincolns and Suzukis, and, of course, the best selection of pre-owned vehicles you'll find anywhere. When you hear people say everybody said go to Medved, that includes me. Medved, on the I-25 corridor, depart the 181 ramp in Castle Rock, or I-70 Wheat Ridge. Exit Kipling, exit Ward, but always exit the giant Medved Autoplex. Hey, Paul, thanks for calling the show. Good morning. Paul.
Oh, hi, Pete. Thanks. Hey, listen, you keep talking about the reckoning, and I believe the reckoning is coming in 2011 as soon as one of the states, and it appears to be Arizona, is going to lead the way, passes legislation requiring candidates starting in 2012, presidential candidates, to specifically document, per the Constitution, their eligibility requirements. And from the article that's posted on WND as of late last night, they're real close to passing that. It's highly likely. And once they do, there are going to be a couple of other states that do.
Yeah, there are some other states that are looking at that. Right? That's right.
Right, which means that once that passes, there's no way that Obama can run without documenting that, and if he's probably not going to be willing to document, or he may not be able to. Who knows? And then the Democrats are going to have a hard time. What are they facing? They're facing having, on one hand, a very viable candidate, and on the other hand, someone who can't be a candidate. And then who do they put up against it? And then how is another interesting aspect of this is how does the main media handle this? In other words, they know this is coming. The folks like Glenn Beck and all those, and O'Reilly, they're going to have to start moving to the center because they can't be hanging all the way to the left, saying, this is a non-issue, and then Obama can't run because of this.
Yeah.
So they have to start moving to the center now.
Yeah, I mean everything you say is true. It's when you chase a story as intricate and as bizarre as this story is, and I'm not making it an example, but it's like chasing the Ramseys, where you would get into, you go down lead someplace and it didn't turn out, you'd come back and go down another story, and eventually, anybody who did the story knew the truth of who murdered that little girl. When Evans appears and says what he says, and then when you bring him on a radio show, you got to do your job as a reporter. You can't just be a host. You got to be a reporter and press the guy on what he said. And what he said, we'll play it for him again. He said that he had. My sense of it was he spoke with the governor. Now, he
was kind of loose on words. You can interpret that he spoke to the staff who represent.
No, play it. A Sheik, play. I want you to hear the cut.
You walk away believing that everyone in the governor's office. Look, the governor isn't specifically necessarily calling the hospitals. His staff is doing it.
Well, no. He
on
said
his
he can't. When he takes office December the 6th. I kept the Tribune. He said that he was going to torpedo the birthers.
Right.
Well, he's not, and it's been well over a month. Actually, it's a month and a half, almost 2 months. And of course, he's done nothing. And he has come out.
Can't.
Well, because he can't. And so, and what's interesting is no help came from D.C. Abercrombie told the Honolulu Star Advertising he was going to search within the entire Hawaii Department of Health to find the definite vital records that would prove Obama born in Hawaii. And Donna Delacruz, who is Abercrombie's spokeswoman, again ignored all of this and the numbers of requests for interviews. Abercrombie's not doing interviews. So, but he did do one with the Star Bulletin, Star Advertiser. And the newspaper asks Abercrombie, I quote, you stirred up quite a controversy with your comments regarding birthers and your plan to release more information regarding Barack Obama's birth certificate. How's that coming? His response, Abercrombie acknowledged the birth issue will have political implications and we simply can't have those implications. And he said he's intent on producing the birth records, but he's not allowed to. Now, that's not what a man said when he ran, and that's not what a man said when he took the job. But then this guy, Evans, who is a Hollywood reporter, and he comes out and he said, well, his longtime friend, we can play it. I mean, he said, I talked to him. When Evans says he spoke to Abercrombie on January 19th, and Abercrombie, this was on some of the the less than mainstream press wire services. Abercrombie reportedly told him that he searched the Hawaiian hospitals using his powers as governor and concluded, according to Evans, there's no Barack. Play that, Sheik. Play that cut again. I mean, I'll let you listen to it, and then you come back, Paul, and tell me what you think. I mean, this is how this...
Yesterday, talking to Neil's office, Neil says that he searched everywhere using his power as governor at the Kapiolani Women's and Children's Hospital and Queens Hospital, the only places kids were born in Hawaii back when Barack was born. There is no Barack Obama birth certificate.
Right. No. That he talked to, and I asked him, I said, who in the hospital did you talk to? Or who in the administration? He couldn't name anybody. So when you're doing a story, you try and do it right and try and do it truthfully, I throw the BS flag at him and say...
Well, then Evans said, well, really, I just called the office and left my name and number.
That's right.
I mean, that was...
So, but you know what? But he went national with what he said on the morning show in Minneapolis, and now he can't back it. So if you're a really legitimate, true investigator of the truth, like I did with him on the show, you call BS on him, and you move on. It doesn't work out.
You were nice to him.
I got to hit the wall. Everybody take care.